Most people who have belly fat are not eating too much. They are eating the wrong signals. And there is a critical difference between those two things that nobody in the mainstream health world is talking about. The fat sitting hard and round in your midsection right now is not the same fat on your arms or thighs. It is not passive. It is not just stored energy waiting to be burned. It is a living, metabolically aggressive tissue wrapped around your liver, your pancreas, and your intestines, pumping inflammatory chemicals directly into your bloodstream 24 hours a day. It is fighting you. And here is what makes this so frustrating. Every conventional strategy you have ever been told to use against it is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what it actually is. You have been told to eat less. You have been told to move more. You have been told to cut carbs, count calories, skip breakfast, and grind through cardio sessions until your knees give out. And yet, the belly stays. Sometimes it grows. And the reason, the biological reason, is that when your body is under chronic stress, when your internal chemistry is screaming danger, starvation makes visceral fat worse. A stressed, inflamed, cortisol-flooded body does not burn its midsection reserve. It protects it. It locks it down like a survival vault. The harder you starve yourself, the tighter your body grips the belly fat. Because from an evolutionary standpoint, that fat depot is your insurance policy against death. Your body will sacrifice muscle, it will sacrifice organ function, but it will not willingly give up visceral fat while it believes you are under threat. So the answer is not to eat less. The answer is to eat more of the specific compounds that change the chemical conversation your body is having with itself. There are 5 foods that function not as calories, but as biological code. They contain molecules that lower cortisol, unclog the liver, raise the hormone that tells fat cells to self-destruct, and restore the cellular sensitivity that makes insulin work the way it is supposed to. When you stack these 5 foods together, you are not dieting. You are sending your body a signal of safety, efficiency, and abundance. And visceral fat cannot survive that signal. This is not motivation. This is biochemistry. Let's build the protocol.
The first layer of the problem is inflammation. Visceral fat is inflamed fat. It releases inflammatory proteins called cytokines, specifically interleukin-6, that travel through your bloodstream and make every cell in your body more resistant to insulin. Insulin resistance means glucose cannot enter your muscle cells efficiently, so it stays in the blood. The pancreas panics and pumps out more insulin, and that excess insulin does one thing with great consistency. It drives energy into fat storage, particularly in the abdomen. So the first thing we have to do is aggressively lower inflammation, not with a pill, with food. Fatty fish, sardines, wild salmon, mackerel, anchovies contain the most potent anti-inflammatory compounds in the human diet, omega-3 fatty acids, specifically EPA and DHA, physically change the composition of your cell membranes, making them more fluid, more receptive to insulin, and less reactive to inflammatory signals. But that is only half the story. The deeper reason to eat fatty fish is a hormone called adiponectin. Adiponectin is produced by your fat cells, and here is the cruel irony. The more visceral fat you carry, the less adiponectin you produce. People with flat midsections have high adiponectin. People with hard bellies have critically suppressed adiponectin. This hormone is your body's fat-burning messenger. When it is circulating in adequate amounts, it travels to your muscles and your liver and tells them to use fatty acids as fuel instead of hoarding glucose. Studies consistently show that increased omega-3 intake directly stimulates adiponectin production. You are not just eating fish for protein, you are using it to restore the hormone your fat cells have been suppressing. 3 to 4 servings a week is the minimum. Daily is optimal. A small portion of sardines or salmon eaten consistently is one of the most powerful metabolic interventions available without a prescription. But lowering inflammation is only the first move. Visceral fat, once it starts to break down, must exit the body through the liver. The liver is the processing plant. It packages fatty acids, filters hormones, and clears metabolic waste. The problem is that most people with significant visceral fat also have a fatty liver, a condition called hepatic steatosis, where the liver itself has become congested with its own fat. When the exit door is clogged, you can drive all the fat mobilization you want, and the fat has nowhere to go. You have to scrub the liver first.
Cruciferous vegetables, broccoli sprouts, arugula, kale, cabbage, contain a sulfur-based compound called sulforaphane that does something remarkable. It activates a genetic switch in the liver cells called NRF2. Think of NRF2 as the master controller of your liver's cleaning department. When it is off, your liver is sluggish, congested, and inefficient. When sulforaphane flips it on, the liver ramps up its phase 2 detoxification enzymes and begins actively stripping fat and toxins from its cells and preparing them for export. Your liver goes from a clogged drain to a functioning filter. There's an additional mechanism here that most people overlook. Cruciferous vegetables contain a compound called DIM, diindolyl methane, which helps the liver metabolize excess estrogen. This matters for visceral fat because certain estrogen metabolites send a direct hormonal signal to the body to store fat in the midsection. By helping the liver clear these compounds efficiently, you remove the hormonal instruction to keep the belly full. Eat these vegetables raw or very lightly steamed. The sulforaphane is most bioavailable when the cell walls are still largely intact. A large handful of arugula, a small portion of broccoli sprouts on top of a meal. This is not a side dish. This is a medicinal act. Now you have lowered inflammation and opened the liver, but if your nervous system is still locked in a chronic stress response, your adrenal glands are still dripping cortisol into your bloodstream around the clock, and cortisol is the primary architect of the hard belly. Here's the mechanism. Cortisol mobilizes glucose into the bloodstream to prepare your body for fight or flight. Insulin then has to deal with that glucose, and the fastest place to store it is the abdomen. High cortisol, high insulin, growing belly. This is a loop that no amount of exercise breaks if the root mineral deficiency is not addressed. The mineral is magnesium. In the food is pumpkin seeds. Pumpkin seeds are among the most concentrated natural sources of magnesium on Earth. Magnesium binds to GABA receptors in the brain, GABA being the neurotransmitter responsible for calm, for the downregulation of the stress response, for the transition from wakefulness into deep sleep. Without sufficient magnesium, the brain stays in a state of low-level electrical agitation. The adrenals keep firing, cortisol keeps trickling, and the belly keeps its grip. A quarter cup of pumpkin seeds eaten daily, particularly in the evening, provides the raw material to physically dampen the stress response at the neurological level. This is not a relaxation technique. This is chemistry. You are feeding the receptor that turns off the alarm. Most people who carry significant visceral fat are walking around magnesium deficient and have never been told, because magnesium deficiency does not show up on a standard blood panel. The symptoms are chronic low-grade anxiety, poor sleep quality, sugar cravings at night, and a belly that refuses to move despite their best efforts. These are not personality failures. They are mineral deficiencies. You have now addressed inflammation, liver congestion, and chronic cortisol, but there is still a metabolic mechanism that keeps visceral fat locked in place even when everything else is improving, and that is blood sugar volatility. Every time your blood glucose spikes sharply after a meal, your pancreas releases a large pulse of insulin. Insulin, in high circulating amounts, is a direct signal to fat cells to take up energy from the blood and store it. It also temporarily shuts off fat oxidation entirely. As long as your meals are producing sharp glucose spikes, your body is spending large portions of the day in fat storage mode rather than fat burning mode. The solution is to physically slow the absorption of every meal you eat. Chia seeds and ground flax seeds contain a specific type of viscous soluble fiber that, when it contacts water in the stomach, swells into a thick gel. This gel lines the small intestine and functions as a physical barrier between the food you eat and your bloodstream. Carbohydrates must diffuse through this gel before they can enter circulation, which flattens the glucose curve dramatically and reduces the insulin response to the same meal. 2 tablespoons of chia seeds or ground flax in water, in yogurt or blended into any meal eaten once or twice daily acts as your insurance policy against insulin spikes. But the benefit does not stop in the small intestine. When this fiber reaches the colon, your gut bacteria ferment it and produce short-chain fatty acids, particularly butyrate. Butyrate is one of the most powerful metabolic signaling molecules your body produces. It travels to the brain and triggers satiety signals. It travels to the liver and improves insulin sensitivity at the cellular level. It signals the mitochondria to become more efficient at burning fat as fuel. You are not just eating fiber, you are feeding the microbiome that then manufactures the compounds that fix your metabolism from the inside out. The final piece is the one most people underestimate because it looks too simple and too familiar, but biochemically, it is the most sophisticated tool on this list. The food is avocado, not because of the healthy fat narrative you have heard 1,000 times, because of potassium. Potassium is the mineral that governs what happens inside the cell when insulin knocks. When potassium levels are adequate, cells can efficiently pull glucose out of the blood in response to insulin. When potassium is deficient, and the majority of people eating modern diets are potassium deficient because they are not eating enough whole plants, cells become resistant to insulin signal. The pancreas compensates by producing more insulin. More insulin circulating means more fat storage and more visceral fat accumulation. An avocado contains more potassium than a banana and delivers it without the accompanying sugar spike. Half an avocado eaten daily begins to restore the cellular potassium-sodium balance that makes insulin sensitivity possible again. It lowers the amount of insulin your pancreas needs to release per meal. And there is a second mechanism. Avocados are rich in a monounsaturated fatty acid called oleic acid. Oleic acid, when it enters the small intestine, triggers the release of a compound called oleolethalamide, OEA. OEA is a signaling molecule that sends a direct line to the brain communicating satiety and simultaneously increasing fat oxidation. It activates the same fat-burning hormonal signal your body naturally produces during a 16-hour fast without you skipping a single meal. You eat the avocado and your body enters a state of metabolic efficiency that mirrors fasting while you are fully fed. That is not a minor benefit. That is a biological override.
Now, stack all 5. A piece of wild salmon on a bed of arugula and broccoli sprouts, dressed lightly, topped with pumpkin seeds, with 2 tablespoons of chia seeds stirred into the dressing, and half an avocado on the side. That is not lunch. That is a biochemical intervention delivered in the form of a meal. Every single element of that plate is sending a signal. Adiponectin rising, liver detox enzymes activating, cortisol pathway quieting, glucose curve flattening, potassium-sodium pump restoring, insulin requirement dropping. You are eating information, and visceral fat responds to information. The hard belly you see in the mirror is not a character flaw. It is not a failure of discipline. It is the physical output of a body that is inflamed, over-cortisoled, liver congested, insulin resistant, and nutrient depleted. It is your biology screaming that something in the chemical environment is wrong. Willpower cannot fix chemistry. Restriction cannot fix inflammation. Running cannot fix a clogged liver or a magnesium-depleted nervous system. The only thing that changes biology is biology. And these 5 foods are the most targeted, research-supported biological tools available to you right now, today, without a prescription and without a hospital. Stop trying to subtract your way to a flat stomach. Start adding the compounds that change what your body is being told to do. Raise adiponectin with fatty fish. Open the liver with cruciferous vegetables. Silence the cortisol loop with magnesium from pumpkin seeds. Flatten the glucose curve with chia and flax. Restore insulin sensitivity with potassium in oleic acid from avocado. Your body is not broken. It is not lazy. It is responding with perfect biological logic to the signals it has been given. Change the signals, and the visceral fat has no metabolic reason left to stay. It is time to stop starving and start signaling.